A show based on the facts, honesty, the man, the myth, the legend, Constitutionalist Joseph M. Leonard.
Everybody, a special end of February 2025 intro before we get into the normal intros to state that I've moved things around a bit. Now, normally, you know, my Wednesdays are guest drops and Saturdays monologue drops. Every once in a while, there'll be a guest on Saturday, but never a monologue on Wednesday. Well, this end of February, the last 2 weeks, there are going to be 2 guest drops a week, 7 specials total in the month of February 2025. As I'm looking up at the TV today about news that RFK Jr. was indeed officially approved by the Senate to HHS. So I had hoped to have Joan Ifland on the show with her, the discussion with her, before he got approved, but things didn't work that way. So I'm moving her show, which we do discuss health. And the next 4 shows kind of sort of all tie either mental or physical health in some way all together. That's why I'm kind of bringing them all together, pushing them up, doing a Tuesday and Thursday, the next to last week of February. February 18th will be Joan Ifland. You can see me looking down if you're looking behind the scenes video, so I can make sure I get it right on the calendar. Jack Lafountain will be on with me on the 20th, healing not just the body, but the mind, the body, and the soul. So that relates in kind of this last month of February, all health and body and mental related together. And then the following week, the last week of February, February 25th, special number 6 will be George Dubec, and we're talking about networking to a better society. That deals with our mental state, our overall mental health as a society. So I'm bringing that in earlier than it would have normally been. And after that, February 27 of 2025, our friend DPB is back with his new song about peer pressure, which of course is mental health related. So I rambled enough. Let's actually get to the intro. Take care. God bless. Welcome to Constitutionalist Politics Podcast, aka CTP. I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard, and that's Lenard. CTP is your no muss, no fuss, just me, you, and occasional guest type podcast. Really appreciate you tuning in. As Graham Norton would say, let's get on with the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Constitutionalist Politics Podcast. Before I get to my guest, Joan Ifland, a little personal note behind the scenes. If I appear a little slow today, if the brain seems a little scrambled today, it is. Just not getting the proper sleep that I need. So if there's a lot more ahs and ums as I try to unscramble the brain to get together a thought or a question, I apologize in advance to you, the audience, and indeed my guest. But I sure didn't want to cancel this, did not want to put it off. Important topic, even though it's going to air after the new year, into the new year, sometime in 2025. Behind the scenes, we are recording on Wednesday, December the 18th, 2024. It will be important to know that
for a reason as we go. The other thing I wanted to mention is I want to try as best possible to avoid any partisan related items here. I'm 62. My entire lifetime, I remember every president having a health person. Of course, the cabinet post, but often there would be a school lunch program czar, as much as I hate that we use that word, right? Or a health this, a fitness that. Arnold Schwarzenegger was health, health and fitness consultant or whatever to George W. Bush, right? So I don't want this to be partisan, but as we go, there will become some partisan questions and issues because, unfortunately, the doggone politics creep into everything. And even though we've been talking about this my whole lifetime, about getting healthier, some people are attacking RFK Jr., and he's not even head of HHS yet. So can we all please calm down and wait and see and try to cooperate and get something done for a change rather than the last 50 years? Talk, 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 and nothing really gets done, or worse, the opposite happens. Because I will mention later several times, intent versus method versus the results, different grades, but that's for later. So with that as a setup, welcome today, Joan Ifland, not Ifland. We made sure to clear that up. Ifland, like it looks, IFLAND, lead author of the textbook Processed Food Addiction, OWN, that's Oprah's old network, food addiction specialist and innovator in food addiction recovery programs. And I also want to give a shout out to Lori Dennison, who I was actually communicating with in order to arrange to have you come on. So finally, we get to welcome to the show, Joan Ifland. How are you?
Well, thank you. It's a huge honor to be here, and I'm very grateful to be connecting with you. It's rare that somebody wants to explore the politics of recovery from processed foods. I'm real excited to be here.
Before I get directly or more involved, and my show normally I try to keep around 30 minutes, but I definitely see us going the full hour. And if you've got the time, who knows, maybe beyond that. Because
I'm here for the duration.
Okay.
You got me as long as you can stand me.
Okay. There is, my audience knows I can't pass the puns, no matter how lame and the wordplay. There's a lot to process here. But right? We're going sorry, had to get the lame pun out of the way. But indeed, there a lot of questions, a lot of rabbit holes to go down. But let's first start with, indeed, the website, normally mentioned at the end, foodaddictionreset.com. And indeed, again, pardon the scrambled brain. We need to do the first thing first, right? Cue the Who song. Who are you? Who? Where were you born? Where were you raised? Where are you now? How much time did you spend in the prison? Kidding aside, no, seriously, your background. What brought you to where you are today so we know your credentials?
All righty. Yeah, let's do the thumbnail. So I was born in 1951 outside of Pittsburgh. My dad, PhD biochemist for a consumer goods company. I grew up in Cincinnati. I took my BA at Oberlin College in political science and government, political science and economics. And then my first job was at the Wisconsin State Legislature as a fiscal analyst. I went there from there to Stanford Business School because I wanted to switch over into business. And from there to 5 years at a Fortune 200 corporation on their corporate finance staff. From there, a full-time mom. I was too sick after 2 pregnancies to go back to work. And for the next 10 years, I raged, I was depressed, I had headaches, I yo-yo dieting and fatigue and brain fog. And I was just an embarrassing mother. I didn't do a good job with my kids. But in January of 1996, I gave up sugars and flours, and my life just changed so radically. The cravings went away, and the brain fog went away, and the fatigue went away. I had been doing a lot of things to try to stop the raging because I was raised by ragers, and it's very traumatizing. And then the lifelong sinus infection went away, and the allergies went away, the things that had kept me from going back to work. And then about 3 weeks into it, I realized that I hadn't yelled at anybody in 3 weeks. And that's what got me. That's what got me into the field. In that moment, I said, I'm just going to spend the rest of my life telling people what processed foods do to them. So fast forward, I wrote a popular book, which I don't recommend. It's not based on science, and it's got some serious mistakes in it. But then I did go and get my PhD. I earned a PhD in addictive nutrition out of school for Newfields. From there, I wrote papers. I had a prepared meal company. None of the things that I did for the first 22 years of my recovery actually helped anybody. And then finally in 2018, I wrote the textbook for the field. So I really dove into the research for 3 years, full time, 2,000 citations in that textbook. You're asking, like, nobody's ever heard of food addiction. How could there be so much research? It's because addictions in general have a lot of characteristics. They do a lot of damage. And when you're reading the obesity research or the eating disorder research or the diabetes research, they're describing aspects of addiction. So I had plenty of evidence. Plus, with brain imaging equipment, one of the first things they did, Nora Volkoff at the National Institute of Drug Abuse, she looked at what are the brains of obese people doing and how does that compare to the brains of drug addicted people? And bing, bing, bing. She nailed it in the late 1990s. Oh, those brains are doing the same things. So it was the first really stunning evidence that processed foods are not food. The brain and the body don't interpret them as food. It interprets them as drugs. So 2018, Zoom came along. The textbook was finished. I knew what we were looking for. Most people at this point, I know this is going to be shocking, but most people would qualify as having severe cravings. They're really sick because of it, but they can't stop eating it. So in 2018, I founded an online community based on Zoom and Facebook, and it was a whole combination of services. But now here we are, almost 7 years into it, and I've just recently been awarded a patent for this process of getting people off the processed foods. And we're shifting our focus from addiction recovery to chronic illness remission. Because now, 7 years into this, we've seen, I mean, this is going to sound way over the top, but honestly, we've seen almost every incurable chronic illness go into remission.
Well, you're kind of sort of preaching to the choir here, because I have been on disability since 2004 due to health issues myself. You saw me drink, right? I indeed drinking plain water.
And you're aware of your
and trying to avoid the roller coaster of the sugar, caffeine, highs and lows, the addiction of it, indeed, the craving of it, and the crashing that occurs when you're not getting it. And indeed, well, today I've got brain fog due to not enough sleep, but yes, I'm healthier now. That I'm still not healthy, but I'm healthier than I was. Thank God.
Bravo.
So,
That is not easy to do.
And also at the beginning of your story of where you, I said, oh no, I don't know if you heard that when you mentioned Pittsburgh. I hope you're not still a Penguins fan, since I'm in the land of the Detroit Dead Wings.
Yeah, I grew up in Cincinnati, and I now live in Seattle.
Oh,
and actually, I lived in New York, for the New York City area, for 13 years, 23 years in Houston. So I'm tri-coastal. I've got a favorite team on every coast.
So you should be a Seattle Kraken fan now, as far as hot. Yeah. But anyway, you're not here to discuss sports.
Oh, but I'm happy to.
We got so much to pack in, or I'd happily go down that road. But website, foodaddictionreset.com. That was created when, and obviously, what will people find there?
Okay, so the most valuable thing you will find there is a self-quiz based on the 11 signs that you have, by tobacco-style marketing techniques, brought over to processed foods in the mid-1980s. The tobacco industry bought Kraft and Nabisco and General Foods, bing, 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 really fast, 3 short years in the mid-1980s. And now remember, I've got a business background. I'm a business analyst type person. And they brought a very specific business model. It's a very specific way of doing business. When you have a worthless product, worthless, destructive product, like a cigarette, like processed foods, like vaping, like alcohol, like opioids, you have to use a particular business model. You cannot sell the product based on the real value of the product, because the product has no value. In fact, it's destructive. So you have to create a fantasy around the product, and then you have to hide addictive substances in the product. You have to create these artificial cravings. Cravings are not normal, and they're not, people say, oh, I have a craving, I'm going to go. No, that's a sign that a business model has created cravings in your brain as a method for selling a product. So that's what happened in the mid-1980s. So if you go to our website and you see this list of 11 signs, it's 11 signs that the tobacco-style processed food industry has trained your brain to crave against your will and to your detriment. But there it is. Go take the self-quiz. You'll get an email inviting you to a free workshop called Food Addiction Next Steps. Also, go there if you have a chronic illness that you want to put into remission.
Yeah, and I do
not. You have addiction.
Yeah, like I say, I drink mostly water, but that doesn't stop me from having a Coca-Cola. Like earlier today when I went to dinner, I had a Coca-Cola, but I'm not drinking 8 liters of it a night anymore. So, yeah, moderation makes a difference and matters.
The more you use of it, the sicker you will be. The less you use of it, the healthier you will be. And your ability to control how much of you use it is based really on having the skill set of controlling those cravings.
Yeah. Like I said, I had I had sweetened tea with real sugar. So I'll get to that in a minute. The other day, indeed, I did have a Coke. But normally, if I'd be out, I'd get a Coke and have 3 refills, right? But now if I have a Coke, I'm lucky to drink half of it because I want to enjoy the taste. I do enjoy the taste. I don't want to completely deprive myself, but indeed moderation
You don't want
matters.
to be sick. Yeah.
Right,
So this
exactly.
battle, you perfectly described the battle. It's the battle between the craving brain and the midbrain and the frontal lobe, which knows better. And the idea that your frontal lobe is going to be in charge and functioning powerfully all the time, when you have these industries that are back here pumping, provoking, stimulating those cravings, that's not realistic. That their frontal lobe's going to win that battle every time.
Instead of
So it's part of the skill set.
Yeah. So instead of, like, to use a young child analogy and a bad parent, constantly caving, if the kid's having a tantrum, giving it whatever it wants, you not giving yourself what that kicking child kid in your head is saying, I want it, I want it. You've got to be your own parent in a sense, yes?
It's a really good analogy. Yeah, and there's sometimes, there's another force in the brain for feeling normal, accepted, cherished, protected in a group. And that's the highest, most human survival instinct, is to be accepted and feel normal. And so if you're in a situation where everybody around you is using processed foods, everybody around you is sick, and you don't join in, you're going to have a boomerang effect in your brain. The next day, it's just the survival instinct is going to say, you're going to eat that. Look, everybody's eating that. If you don't eat that, if you're not accepted, if they don't welcome you, you're going to die. The hyenas are going to get you. So sometimes it's better to satisfy the survival part of the brain that wants you to feel normal, because it could be more difficult the next day. It's fun to understand the different forces in the brain, because it empowers us. It makes us, having the skill set and the understanding. That just means that if you do eat something because everybody's eating it, you're not going to blame yourself. You're not going to beat yourself up. You're not going to hate yourself. You're like, okay, well, I saw that, my survival instinct to feel normal and fit in was at play. Maybe you might want to like rethink whether you want to hang out with those people anymore, especially if you're trying to put diabetes into remission. You're trying to avoid an amputation. You're trying to avoid going blind. You're trying to avoid losing your kidneys. And you're like, you know what? Maybe it's not really a good idea to hang out with those people.
It's like an alcoholic. An alcoholic has to change their friends. You can't be with the bar crowd anymore, or you have the greater chance at relapse. I want to go into sugar in a minute, but I did go to a bar and got a bar burger today and fries. Normally, though, 20 years ago, I would have eaten that whole burger and all those, but instead I ate a little. And the bar burger is ground beef as opposed to going to McDonald's, which is not to say I deprive myself. I go to McDonald's every once in a while, but it's a treat, not an everyday thing.
Everybody is weaving their own path, based on their health profile, based on their health goals, based on the amount of stressors in their lives. Stress will kick up cravings, any kind of an intense emotion. Like, I know more people that lapse at weddings, which are happy events, than than even funerals. It's just, you're there for a long time.
Let's celebrate and let loose, right?
The peak is in the middle. The cueing, the triggering, the stimulation, the signaling, it's all so intense, and it goes on for hours and hours. You might be someplace for the entire weekend. And when you understand what it means for this stimulation to build up in your brain and cause, result in you eating something that you really don't want to eat, if you understand the mechanics, then you can say, okay, I need to, and then you have the skill set to pull yourself back out of the cravings, because eating something can cause really intense cravings. It's a risky thing to do. But if you have a skill set for climbing back out of the cravings, you have somebody to talk to about it. You know what the cue building up is, and you're not blaming yourself, and you've got uncraving, clean, real food available to you. You can climb back out of it. as opposed to the person who has that piece of cake at the wedding and they're still binging 5 years later.
Yeah.
You have to know yourself. And what I really like about your sharing is you know yourself.
I have come to know myself. I have several shows. This show is about self-reflection. That's what we're talking
Super.
here. Walk
Super.
into your bathroom, look yourself in the mirror. Will you be honest with yourself or lie to yourself? Can you handle the questions instead of getting mad at us? Honestly answer the questions or get mad at us. How dare we make you ask a question? It's because you're mad at us, because you're really mad at yourself. You know the answer would be inconvenient.
I just that phrase, you're mad at yourself, is actually really well documented in the research because of the messaging from the cultures, particularly the weight loss industry and the medical industry. Oh, you should be able to control this. You should be able to improve your diet. Not when you have a processed food, tobacco style industry constantly stimulating your big brain into cravings.
And all the TV ads, radio ads,
Exactly. And
constant.
then the stressful entertainment, stress triggers cravings.
And then stress eating because of it. Yes.
Fatigue triggers a lot of things, trigger cravings. But as you gain the skills, people hate themselves. They're mad at themselves. They hate themselves. They don't like themselves. They reject. It's called self-stigmatization. It's a very painful aspect of this existence. Why can't I stop eating? Why can't I lose the weight? Why can't I get my glucose numbers under control? Why is my blood pressure out of control? And they're being told, which is not true. Oh, you should be able to do that. You should be able to, control your food. You're just a glutton. You're out of control. You have an addictive personality. No, 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 no. You're being stimulated into insanity by tobacco style processed food marketing. And it takes a skill set of protecting yourself, shielding yourself from that kind of triggering, plus the social pressure to consume these toxic foods. This is not your fault. This is not your fault. And please don't be mad at yourself. You're being challenged here. This is beautiful.
Oh, but that's the first step. First step to self-awareness, right? It's like grieving. I say that about politics. Someone recognizing finally they're wrong. They're going to go through shock, denial, anger before they get to acceptance. That's part of the self-realization journey. I want to go back to my drink at dinner. I had iced tea and real sugar packets into it.
You're weaving your way through this minefield of a restaurant menu.
Yeah, but I could have just had a water, right? But again, I treated myself to that, and knowing I'm in control. Normally, I drink 3 of them. I drank half of it. But what I'm leading to is, one, I'm not a doctor, nor do I even play one on TV or the radio. But I want to lay out a theorem, and you respond scientifically if I'm on track or I'm wacko.
Super.
But
let's do it.
To set it up, does everyone remember saccharin? But people are out there drinking diet this, diet that, and wondering why they're not losing weight. That's because there are artificial chemicals in there your body cannot break down and deal with. So you're not losing the weight you thought you would, because I contend I was better off putting real sugar and controlling the amount I had rather than having 3 Diet Cokes. Because again, saccharin was found to cause cancer. It was eliminated. Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. But it's my contention at some point in the future, they're going to finally admit to the fact those chemicals are not being processed. So you are doing more harm than good.
Any artificial sweetener, even stevia, any kind of concentrate, So here's how it works. You your tongue, it starts with the contact of a taste bud, gets that intense sweet flavor. It panics because high blood glucose can kill you. Low blood glucose can kill you. There's a safety zone for glucose. But all the alarm bells go off because you have this intense sweet taste, and your pancreas panics and it releases a ton of insulin because the whole system is expecting this load of sugar, this load of glucose. So, okay, oh my gosh, we're going to get the most awful glucose surge because you can taste it. It's coming, it's coming. So the pancreas panics and releases a bunch of insulin, which now is out there in the bloodstream, taking every little bit of glucose and storing it into fat, muscle, and liver so that you don't die from this big deluge of glucose coming. And then it doesn't come. Boom, your glucose is crashing.
Thank you.
You're now in danger of dying from low blood glucose. Now, here's the sad thing. Your body, you don't die because the adrenal glands release adrenaline, because adrenaline will go running over to those muscle cells and the fat cells and pull that glucose back into your system so you don't die. But the other way that your brain can get that glucose back up is to get you to go and binge on a sugar item. Artificial sweeteners are set up for sugar binging, flour binging, refined carbohydrate binging.
Mm-hmm. I want to thank you so much for upholding, again, not a doctor, not a scientist, but I've got functioning brain cells and common sense. I can put 2 and 2 together and get 4, not 7, right?
Yes, you have artificial sweeteners in everything, and people are gaining weight like crazy.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Joseph M. Leonard, host of Constitutionals, taking a brief moment to thank myarchit.com. Together, we share the Christian and family value of honoring family. myarchit.com helps you do that. Preserving family memories online also, therefore, can be shared online. Think of myarchit like a Noah's Ark for images, audio, video, preserving, honoring your family. Thank you again to the folks over at myarchit.com.
Yeah, so
it doesn't take a scientist, but I think it's nice to know the underlying mechanisms.
No, and
you're not crazy. You haven't lost control. It's not your childhood issues. It's not that you lack willpower. It's not that you don't want it, or any of the other insane things that people say about to explain to you why you're overeating. You're being grossly manipulated, horrifically manipulated. The food industry, but then the medical industry comes along and says, "Oh,
here's a pill for that. Ozempic, right?
Ozempic. How tragic."
Just shoot up the rest of your life to artificially counter what you've artificially done to yourself. So now you've got 2 competing artificial problems that are going to cause additional new other side effects.
Well, the saddest thing about that is that if you try to just, Band-Aid this and you don't get down and fix it, you go to the root causes, then you never get a chance to be free. So human beings are absolutely spectacular. They're so wonderful. They're kind, they're generous, they're smart, they're funny. But if you have chemicals in your body, you
moody,
just never
hormonal,
get you never get the thrill of it's thrilling to be a human being. And when you have these chemicals that are depressing, they have side effects. They create this extra anxiety. You're tired, you're brain fogged, even if you're cutting back on the processed foods because you don't have cravings for them. Everywhere you go, there they are, you're eating them, and you think it's a weight issue. It's not a weight issue. It's in every cell in your body functioning happily issue.
Well, now,
Yeah.
I mean, people can look at me on the behind the scenes video at BitChute, Brighteon, Daily Motion, Rumble, and YouTube. I'm not starving away by any sense, right? My BMI is a little high. I could stand to lose some pounds, but it's not
Well,
critical. It's not
I'm gonna-
critical at this point. And I'm not yo-yoing, which is a whole other problem in and of itself. But
yeah,
thank
not
you.
yet.
Yeah, thank you again for clinically stating the underlying facts and factors. People needed to hear that indeed that common sense is clinically backed up.
Yes, yes, there's science behind it. But I want to offer you something about weight status. This is a study that came out. It had its like nanosecond of fame, and then it disappeared. And it was because uh, it ran counter. It ran counter to the medical industry and the weight loss industry. Here was the finding. This was a statistical study that was done by the top statisticians at the National Institutes of Health. Absolutely unassailable. No chance for a mistake. Here's what they found. People in the overweight category live the longest. Not the normal weight category, certainly not thin. It's people in the overweight category live longest. People in the normal category live next longest. But people in the thin category they live shorter lives than people in the overweight category, and then you get obesity and severe obesity.
No, and I'm glad you went there because I think that was the next important thing to say. A big difference between a little overweight and obesity. Definitely that kind of overweight, not good.
Okay, but I want to offer you something else, even in that discussion, which is obesity is not causing the diseases. Processed foods are causing the diseases. So people like maybe they have 100 pounds to lose and they think, oh, it's going to take too long. It won't have any impact. And everybody's telling them it's the weight, it's the weight, it's weight. That is not true. It's the processed foods because we have all kinds of people who get off the processed foods. They get support. They're in a community where it feels normal to eat real food. And that's often the deciding factor for people to get control over their food. But they could still have 100 pounds to lose. But because they're off their processed foods, their blood pressure is going to normal rapidly. Their blood glucose is going to normal rapidly. Their heart rates are normalizing rapidly. Like we tell people, you've got to be in touch with your doctor to deprescribe. You could fall.
Yeah.
Because your blood pressure is too low because you don't have the underlying cause is no longer there, but you're still taking the medication to bring it down. Your blood pressure could be too low, your heartbeat could be too slow, your blood glucose could be too low, and you could be in medical trouble from being now over medicated. So I just want people to be excited about giving up processed foods. The benefits are going to come within days. You're not going to have to wait. Talk about instant gratification. You start putting
and that's today's world, right? Now. What do I get out of this now? Not next week, not next year, now. And you're outlining benefits now. So I do want to pivot. Now, I think we've covered enough of that to make the difference without dwelling on it and digging down into such a deep hole. People will want to go, snooze,
Good.
boring, right?
So
let's shift a little to the politics. And again, at the top, I pointed out the issue of intent. The road to hell is paved with good intentions a lot of times, as they say. Method matters and results have to matter, right? Now, so looking politically, I want to go back, and people that are regular to the show are going to freak out. I know their heads are going to explode because I'm about to praise Bill Clinton for something.
Ah,
We're not talking the intern stuff and policy, except for here. I have, by the time this airs, those shows will have passed, but We the People demand list, a kind of new quasi contract with America. One of the items I call for is a return to midnight basketball, as it was called. Now, the intent then was more anti-crime, but the side benefit was exercise. And especially now with kids constantly with the VR goggles in virtual world rather than dealing with the real world, I say we need to bring that back. The intention, in my mind, with Bill and now an A+. Bill Clinton's methodology, I give him a B+, right? Nobody was forced to do it. Let's make it so it's offered and available. Get kids then off the streets and away from the gangs. Today, the need to get them off their doggone couch and doing something. So I think, again, as long as it's not mandated, like JFK, the Peace Corps, again, that was voluntary, but like in Israel, they mandate military service. That's a good thing, and there's very many reasons for that. But I don't want a dictatorial mandated through junior high, you will engage in this, like it or not. So method matters. And the last thing is the results were good under Bill Clinton. There's no reason to not think results will not be perfect, but better. So bringing midnight basketball or soccer or hockey or indoor football or whatever, you would sign up for that as a good thing then. I'm taking it by you're shaking your head.
It is a good thing. It's common sense, a good thing, but that's absolutely not where I would start.
Well, it's an easy place. Can we do some of the easy stuff? Because people are going to fight on the more difficult stuff, like they are already attacking RFK Jr. He's not even in office yet.
We'll swing around to RFK. But here's the thing, is that for the last 40 years, since tobacco started this tobacco style marketing of processed foods, they hid a lot of high fructose corn syrup in the food. They hid a lot of extra fat and salt in the food, just like they hid nicotine in cigarettes and pyrazine. They attacked small children. They took the Marlboro Country Store and they transformed it into the Kool-Aid Wacky Warehouse to addict 2-year-olds to sugar. They did all this stuff. It's all marketing stuff. So let's look, the idea here is that we can talk about is taking some of the things that worked for tobacco control, which Clinton was involved in. He had, his name's gone straight out of my head. He wrote the book, The End of Overeating, but he was the head of the FDA, and he went into the trenches to fight the tobacco industry.
Yeah.
So here's what we got, and it worked. We got control of information on the packaging. So that, just saying that this is,
I'm with you.
And this has worked in other countries. So in Chile, for example, they have a rating system on the package. If it's high in sugar or it's high in fat, it's got a warning sign on it. It worked in tobacco and it can work in processed foods. Now, then it gets
we are on the same page.
Yes,
but again, there will be people in the back pocket of the food lobby and the pharma lobby who will fight it, so it'll be more difficult. But I agree with instead of fighting it, if we cooperate, I don't want to dictatorially take away your Big Mac. I want you to be able to buy it, but it has to, and we did it in the past. We put the labels of the calorie and the blah, 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 we need to go a little further. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Now, like if it's got red dye 40 that everybody's talking about, I
It's a
don't
warning
want,
label.
yeah, I
It needs
don't
a
want
warning
to
label.
dictate that be removed. You want to buy that, it has
That's
to
your
have
business.
a warning label. And I am as anti-tax as they come. I'm all for a bad foods tax. If you want red dye
Yes.
40, pay more
You're going to have
for
to
it.
pay us because then we're going to be spending money treating you for the consequences. So you take that we've got established policies that we know work. Now, I will say work in quotations because I think what happened, why did the tobacco industry specifically go into processed foods? Because we already had evidence that when people stop smoking, they gain weight. So tobacco chose a market to go to where people were going to be moving anyway. So what happened was by controlling tobacco education, tobacco taxes, limited purchasing. They restricted purchasing opportunities, and then warning labels. All that stuff worked. But I think what happened is
But
because
cigarettes are still available. Again, if you want to buy it, you assume that risk.
But here's the thing that we did not do. And it's the reason why we are so incredibly sick today. We didn't treat the cravings. We were totally sitting ducks for the tobacco food industry to come along and just walk our cravings for cigarettes over to processed foods and attack small children. Oh my gosh, this is a great improvement. The food industry today, I think it's about a $2.7 trillion industry. But there's another huge, huge difference between tobacco and processed foods. In tobacco, the medical industry swung around and got behind tobacco cessation. But the medical industry today, now I'm glad you're sitting down. This is a shocking number. The medical industry today has revenue of $4.5 trillion. Now, get ready. Here's the worst part. 90% of that is related to these chronic diet-related diseases. That is 17% of the U.S. domestic economy. So if you put the two together, the food industry and the medical industry, you're talking about 25% of the U.S. domestic economy. And that, if you just swing around back to your good questions about the political situation, that answers the questions about the political situation.
Yeah, because there will always be
disarmed, and then he will be shredded.
Yeah, exactly.
By the lobbyists.
The lobbyists and the politicians who crave the money in their back pockets will, and that's why we have to have all these things brought into Congress and put on the record. Who is voting against these things, right? I don't want to take away choice, but I want, like RFK Jr. says about vaccines, I want informed consent. And like now I want to shift to the Obama years, right? Michelle Obama. Intentions, give her an A+. The school lunch program. The methodology, however, D-. Results,
well,
F. Complete. Let me finish the setup. What happened is they mandated and dictated, you will eat this, and the kids are throwing it out. They're not eating it.
Well, she started talking about cutting back on processed foods, and the Democratic Party, which depends on contributions from the processed food industry, no, she is not allowed to talk about that. And so she hit on the, what was it, Let's Move America program. So she was switched over to Let's Move. But Let's Move, so trying to treat most Americans now meet the criteria for a severe cravings disorder. If those 11 signs that I was talking about earlier, I adapted those from the criteria for alcoholism. And the threshold that the American Psychiatric Association has established, they've said if you meet 6 or more of these criteria, you're in this severely and you need immersion recovery. You really need to be protected from triggering. You need to be protected from availability of the whatever the substance is. And most Americans, well over 80% of Americans, would meet 6 or more of those criteria. So you've got a severe mental imbalance. You've got severe release of these craving neurotransmitters in the midbrain, and the frontal lobe cannot compete. It cannot put out enough rational, I don't want to eat that neurotransmitters. These two parts of the brain are competing for control of the behavior centers. So the craving centers win. Americans are eating 73% of their food in processed foods, and 93% of Americans have one or more of either high triglycerides, high blood glucose, high blood pressure, or fat tissue on their bodies. So 93% of the country have a diet-related diagnosis, eating 73% of their food in processed foods. These are massive profit centers. They're massive profit centers for the medical industry. They're massive profit centers for the pharmaceutical industry. They're massive profit centers for the processed food industry. They're massive profit centers for the agricultural industry. This is going to have to come from the ground up. It's going to have to be a natural evolution. And I do have an answer. So I've talked for a while. I'd like to hear your response, but then I want to talk about what I think our solution.
We'll move into the conclusions in a
Okay.
minute. I want to go back to personal anecdotal experience, and you can agree or disagree, but as setup, right? When I was in school way back when, wow, they were teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic, not raunch, perversion, and peddling racism. That's a whole other topic you're not here for. But school lunches, right? Sometimes I would eat the better lunch entrees that were offered. Some days I wanted a pizza, burger, and a shake. And to me, it's levels of offerings. Like I used to drink Carnation instant breakfast sometimes for breakfast rather than eggs or pancakes or whatnot. So to me, I want to solve it through options and choice, because again, forcing this good on them and them not eating it is worse in my mind than the pizza burger on occasion. No food means they're not going to learn anything because they're hungry, they're hangry, they're fidgety. Yeah. They can't focus and pay attention in school. So we've got to have a balance, have the good meal, have the occasional other thing that they're going to want to have the Carnation instant breakfast. If you refuse to eat what's available, at least have that so you're getting some nutrients. That to me makes common sense. Do you agree, disagree?
I can offer you some other ways. If you have the education and you're in a support group in a community that is reinforcing this education all the time, what you want to do is you want your food choices to come up from way deep down inside of you. Because on the morning when you have the Carnation instant breakfast, you're tired, you have racing thoughts, you can't focus. But on the morning when you have the eggs and bacon, you're sharp and you have good energy and you're smart and you're clear and you're productive. After a while, this is coming up from deep inside of you. You just have a natural aversion to the Carnation breakfast, and you love your eggs and bacon or sausage, good sausage, not crappy sausage. But this is where we don't tell people what to do. We have support communities, we have remission communities, we have training for advocates, for people to help other people. We
Okay,
do
yeah,
all
let's
that.
get into that in a second. But we are on
don't,
the
but we
same
don't
page.
tell people what to do.
Mandating and dictating is anti-human nature. Push,
If-
push, push.
but-
You're going to
but
get
what's-
pushed back.
But what's irresponsible is to make those products available without educating.
Yeah,
They're toxic. They're
agree.
toxic.
Agree
Like
with you there.
cigarettes, and unbelievably destructive. 1.7 million Americans, more than 5 times the worst year of COVID. 1.7 million Americans die from this every year. They have short lives. Those grandchildren don't have their grandparents. Husbands don't have their wives. So it's immoral to me to put products on the market that kill people without educating people, not just about the consequences, but also about how to avoid the cravings that will override. Cravings will override education.
What I hear is that we're on the same page of informed consent and proper scientific evidence facts, not study bought and paid for by so-and-so giving the results that they bought and paid to have, like we get in a lot of the climate hoax thing.
Exactly.
Which, again, a whole other topic, but indeed, moving to conclusion and foodaddictionreset.com.
Don't let me leave without my big finale.
Let's go.
Okay.
Have
Here's
at
my big finale. You know what non-smoking started in restaurants. The environmental move started in elementary schools. I think recovery from processed foods is going to happen in workplaces because it's the only place where the money is on the same side of the table. So if if I'm a doctor, I want to get money out of you, and in order for me to get money out of you, I have to keep you sick. But in a workplace, the management, the ownership is paying hand over fist for medical expenses. And so we're starting a consulting business here. We will go into a workplace and we will say, let's educate your clients, your employees. Let's make it normal to eat real food. Let's make it normal to be healthy, to not be taking any medications because your doctor has de-prescribed them. Let's get that let's get that skill building. Let's teach people where those cravings are coming from and how to shield not just yourself, but your family against them. And then the expenses of the business drop. So the business gets the money from making the effort. It's the only place where the money is on the right side of the table.
That makes sense. And yeah, profit motive. Some will tell you, oh, you're just being greedy. That's evil. No, and the business
It's a win-win. It's a huge win-win.
It is. I agree. Yeah. And the business also gains by having healthier employees who actually they show up to work. They're not sick and home all the time.
Yeah, they're not. There's presenteeism where you're present, but you're too sick to work. Brain fog, fatigue, depression, anger, all of those things that processed foods are related to.
Yeah.
Well, you were very kind to let me get my last hurrah.
No, that makes perfect sense. It does. That, again, to me, I don't need to be a doctor. I don't need to be a scientist. I just have to be a thinker and able to apply common sense. And, that's why it'll never work. You're trying to apply common sense.
Well, being an MBA, having a business background, spending those 5 years in a corporate environment, I think I've got the right button. They do have to produce profits. This is basically what we have in the U.S. today is unregulated capitalism, which is why these companies are able to kill off 1.7 million of the population every year and get away with it.
And the employees should have a financial greed, self-greed, if we want to put that label on it, motivation, because companies are no longer covering full health care unless if you've got a massive Cadillac benefits being paid for, forced by union contracts, most people have to pay something at least for their health insurance. And if we get better, those costs will come down. Your portion will come down also.
Well, people have no idea how financially ruinous processed foods are. It costs a lot to buy that much food, and you're sick all the time, so you're not getting promoted. You don't have the self-confidence to go for promotions. If you're an hourly worker, you're not at work because you're sick frequently. You're buying all these different sizes of clothing, and you're buying over-the-counter medications, and you might have like restless spending addiction and other numbing, like gambling addiction. This is painful, and you want to numb out, so you can have other addictions as a consequence. It's financially ruinous, and people will run up credit card debt to pay for midnight runs to the convenience store, etc.
I thought we might disagree more than we have. I think we are pretty much on the same pages. How we get it done, how fast we can get it done versus the resistance we know we're going to get. What can we do now? What can we do a little later? What may have to wait? We didn't get here overnight, right? So it won't happen by waving a magic wand and fixing it all overnight. Let's get what we can right away, like a midnight basketball, and warning labels at least, because again, I do not.
And programs for workplaces. I want programs for workplaces at the top of the list.
How about tax incentives? Lower, if they've got them, lower their taxes and I don't want dictatorial, commie, fasci, sociis, mandate, hand down. You will do this.
No, that will definitely not work.
Incentives.
But education, changing your environment, changing the signaling, the stimulation in your environment. I'm just going to encourage you to put that at the top of the list.
Yeah.
No smoking zones were very helpful in helping people give up the cigarettes.
I think they went a little too far later, and now most restaurants are entirely smoke-free and pushing them outside to smoke. People are attacking cigar bars. No, let people again
don't
have
go in
that.
Them. If that bothers you, don't go there. Nobody's required to go into a cigar bar.
If the more you try to force it, the more you're going to get pushback because of the human nature. So and
it won't happen. If you try to take the processed foods out of a business, for example,
by order, by dictate,
without the support, they'll just walk out the door and go to the convenience store and get them. And I've had managers tell me that, oh no, this isn't going to work. It only works because you have skills and you have education and common knowledge. You've got to be in an environment where everybody understands what you're doing, and nobody's ridiculing you or denying your reality. And people can share wins. So, oh my gosh, my diabetes is gone. That's not possible. But then the other person over here, oh, my diabetes is gone too. All of a sudden, your brain starts thinking, oh, it must be possible to put. Nobody's ever really. And now they're interested because nobody wants to be a diabetic.
Yeah. Well, bringing this full circle, we've already gone over an hour, as I figured we would. Like with a lot of guests, we could go on for 3 days, let alone 3 hours, but we got to end somewhere. But bringing it back to, as I introduced at the beginning, intent. There's great intent here, but it doesn't matter if it's not followed with a good methodology that indeed incentivizes rather than punishes only to get the results. So back to Clinton, A+, B+, B+. Obama, A+ on the intention, C- on the method, and an abject failure in the results. All of those things matter. So thank you. I haven't said your name in a while, Joan Ifland, for joining. I knew even if we were going to disagree on things, that this would be a great conversation, a very important conversation that we have. And like I say in other episodes, we, the people, you can't go back to sleep. Voting isn't enough. Like all of this, you've got to be active and involved, awake and alert, not a sheeple following the crowd. Right. I've kind of heard a lot of that without those specific words from you tonight. Applying common sense, not the brainwashing coming in from the TV. Principles, not personality. There will be things I agree with RFK Jr. on. There may be things I don't agree with him on, but attacking him just for the sake of attacking him to protect big pharma or big processed foods, that's not a principle. That's unprincipled. And then engaging in personal character assassination. And we've got to deal with the issues. We may not always like the questions or the answers, but we've got to be willing to have the discussions. Yes?
I hope you invite me back. Oh. we could talk another hour. I love talking. It's rare to find somebody who really wants to get into the politics or the media treatment. I like what you're talking about. This is not, we've kind of lost traction on the value of issues. And now we are into just character, personality. It's just sad to see politics going that way.
Yeah, I don't know. You remember that group? I can't remember the name of the group, but they sang Cult of Personality, right? There's a lot of that. It's a lot of personality and following the celebrity, following the crowd, emotion-based feedback rather than thinking. This show is about faith, but thinking about it. Logic and reason. Can you argue it without, well, just because I feel that way? No, that's not an answer. That's not a valid answer. Can you back it up with any valid logic, reason, thought? Right? So indeed, I foresee we probably need a follow-up after RFK is hopefully sworn in, and we have 6 months to see what is or is not happening as a follow-up. I will definitely...
All right, I'm going to be looking for that invitation. I have enjoyed this thoroughly. I love talking to you.
Well,
it's
most
great.
People, yeah, half tongue in cheek, right? Because I like to say, if you can't laugh at yourself, you shouldn't be laughing at anybody else. And with as serious as things are, you got to keep a sense of humor. So I'm going to make fun of myself here and say, most people cover the kids' ears. God, I never want to talk to that asshole again, right? Fun,
I don't think you're an asshole.
Poking fun. I'm sure most don't, but no doubt some do. But again, if you can't poke fun at yourself, self-reflection, as we talked about, can you look yourself in the mirror, honestly ask questions, or are you going to get bent out of shape because you wouldn't like the answers if you were honest with yourself?
Well, just remember that somebody is manipulating your brain. Don't get mad at yourself. We're not paralyzed, and we're not sitting back and say, oh, this isn't my fault. I'm not going to do anything. We're saying this isn't my fault, and I am going to get the skills to do something about this. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you again for coming.
All right.
I'm glad, even despite my brain fog due to not enough sleep, I'm glad I didn't try to cancel and put it off. We needed this discussion. We needed it.
I'm really glad to know you.
And so thank you. Take care. God bless.
Take care, you too. Have a good evening. Have a good life. But I'll see you in 6 months.
I hope so. Yeah. If you don't hear from me,
I'll get Lori to reach out.
Right. I was just going to say that. Lori Dennison put it on the calendar for 6 months. And if you didn't hear from me, come knocking at my door again via
We'll do it.
email. We definitely will need a follow-up. Take care.
All right.
all.
Take care.
God bless.
Thank you.
The Constitutionalist Politics Podcast, normally in conjunction and corresponding with articles, can normally for the Saturday monologue shows be found at thefordsnews.com, Substack, and find extended show notes, including related links, in the Buzzsprout episode edition of the transcript. Thank you for having tuned in for Constitutionalist Politics Show. If you haven't already, please check out my primary internationally available book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you. Available anywhere books are sold. If you have locally run bookstores still near you, they can order it for you. And let me remind, over time, the fancy high production items will come. But for now, for starters, it's just you as a very appreciated listener by me. All substance, no fluff, just straight to key discussion points. A show that looks at a variety of topics, mostly politics, through a Christian U.S. constitutionalist lens. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Take care. God bless. Like and subscribe to Constitutionalist Politics Podcast and share episodes. We need your help.
Wham Radio, 1600 AM and 92.7 FM is your conservative flamethrower. Weekdays, Steve Gruber starts things off at 6 a.m. Gruber gives his perspective on the issues of the day. At 9 a.m., Glenn Beck blazes the airwaves with his nationally syndicated program. From noon to 3, it's Dennis Prager. At 3 o'clock, it's Wham's own Thayrone X. On the Edge, Thayrone tells it exactly as he sees it. At 6, it's The Dana Show, your conservative alternative. At 8, don't miss Joe Pags. Weekends are filled with conservative talk as well. Fingers Malloy, Thomas LeDuc, The Abolitionists Roundtable, A Moment of Clarity with Pastor Rick, Your American Heritage with Ed Bondarenka, Dave Janda's Operation Freedom, and Dick Kupke's Trigger Talk. You can even get links to Wham podcasts from Dave, Dick, and of course Thayrone, all from their pages on our website, whamradio.com. Keep it locked on Wham Radio, 1600 AM and 92.7 FM in southeastern Michigan, and whamradio.com anywhere in the world.